Welcome to the Friendly Podcast Guide, sorting through podcasts so you don't have to. I'm Andy Smiley, and I want to help you discover the right podcast without having to listen to an entire episode. Now, let's talk podcasts. Hello. You all know that I love to dive into the behind the scenes of creative people, which is one of the reasons I make this podcast. So when I found the Music You're Missing podcast, I was so excited to get to hear about how these musical artists got to where they are today. And I was also excited to learn about new music that I probably missed while listening to Princess and Ninja songs for my kids. I can't wait for you to hear Brendan, the host of Music You're Missing, talk about his favorite interview. But first, here's some details about the show. When you pull up Music You're Missing on your podcast app, this is the description you'll see. 60,000 songs are uploaded to Spotify every day, leaving many artists lost in the shuffle. Brendan Janetti wants to show you the music you're missing on this artist interview style podcast. The length of each episode is 30 to 45 minutes, with episodes also split up into separate smaller episodes if you only want to listen to a certain part of the interview. The series is ongoing, with new episodes available on Wednesdays. Before we learn more about the vibe of the show, we're going to take a quick break to talk about Olive & June nail polish. I love having nail polish on, but I don't handle it well when my nail polish starts to chip a day or two after I paint my nails. That is where Olive & June comes in. I use their Mani system and my nail polish will stay on for a week with no chipping. It brings me so much joy every time I look at my nails with these fun colors, and I want you to have that joy too. You can get 20% off a Mani or Pedi system by using the affiliate link in the show notes. Now we get to hear from Brendan about how he got his start in the music industry. Today we have Brendan Janetti from the Music You're Missing podcast, and I am so excited to talk to him.
Hello, Andy. I'm so excited you gave me the time of day. I appreciate it.
I'm just excited to hear about your podcast. I love a good music podcast, and I listened to a couple of episodes before this, and I'm excited. Can you first introduce yourself to my listeners?
Yes, definitely. So my name is Brendan Janetti. I'm from Boston. I'm 25 years old, but I've been working in the music industry since I was 18 years old. And honestly, from the second I started working in the music industry and I realized kind of how things worked, I knew I wanted to do something on my own, and hence Music You're Missing was born.
I love that. So why did you start your podcast?
Yeah, so my first job in music was with iHeartRadio, which is like top 40. And a lot of my favorite artists were not top 40. And because of that, there were just so many missed opportunities for these artists. They were not getting the representation that I felt they deserved, while at the same time, like they really were cultivating a strong online presence. And there just really wasn't anything for them at the time. Like this is before TikTok too. So I knew I kind of wanted to put all my eggs in a basket. Granted, I was still an undergrad, and just really utilize any industry connections. And I did from when I was an undergrad till afterwards, until I eventually launched the brand that is now Music You're Missing, where I get to highlight the artists who I really do think, deserve more attention. And a lot of them do go on after speaking with us to go on and do like that top 40 circuit. So it's kind of like the before top 40 time. That's kind of really why I wanted to do it. I just wanted to give my favorite artist a platform.
That's awesome. Okay. So you're going to have to explain, what does top 40 mean for me and anyone else who doesn't know what that means?
Yes, of course. It's basically like pop music, and top 40 are basically these songs that are essentially making money right now, like your Doja Cats, your Drakes, like any mainstream artists. That being said, there is definitely room for these essentially random artists to break the top 40 now, especially with TikTok. So that's why Music You're Missing is really interesting too, is because, we're talking to people who no one knows, and then in a week they're on the radio. So that's top 40.
So cool.
Yeah, the people in radio pretty much, or in like the pop circuit.
Sure. Okay. So like the songs that you hear over and over again on the radio are top
exactly
40.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will
Perfect.
say, like the lower half of the top 40, they're the ones that aren't annoyingly played over and over again, like not The Shape of You's by Ed Sheeran.
Okay. That makes sense. I feel like I was in radio, but I was on like the talk side, not the music side. So I don't know all of the music radio lingo, but now I know at least one more phrase. So what do you want people to get out of your podcast?
Yeah, I want someone to listen to the podcast and either find new music that they really like, or they already know the artist that I'm interviewing and they get to actually hear from them. Because a lot of these artists, like I said, they're cultivating a huge following, but not a lot of outlets are giving them the time of day. So they don't really get to tell their story in full, at least. So it's really cool when, like a longtime fan will reach out and just be like, yo, I didn't know that about this artist, or like I've never really got to hear such a long format of them speaking so candidly. So yeah, either find new music or hear more from your favorite artist.
I love that. I feel like it might be kind of obvious, but I feel like your podcast is a little like mine. And I love being able to hear kind of behind the scenes or just hear the backstory of creators and how they got to where they are and why they do what they do. So yeah, I absolutely love what you're doing with your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. And honestly, I learned a lot just from talking to so many people who, we're in such like a creator economy. So I really do learn a lot and how to leverage some things that some of these guests are doing for my own content as well.
Definitely. I feel like I've learned so much for my own podcast, just talking to other podcasters. And like sometimes it's little like tips and tricks. And sometimes it's like just the way that they look at a problem. You're like, oh yeah, I could totally solve this a different way and make it that much better. I love that.
Yeah.
How would you describe the vibe of your show?
Music You're Missing is definitely upbeat. That being said, we definitely, have space for organic conversation. And if someone is more of kind of like a melancholic sound, we definitely will dive into whatever the music's about. But it's mostly upbeat, especially when we have artists in studio. Every time we have an artist in studio, I make them play a game from my childhood bedroom, and it's called Brendan's Bedroom. So it's really fun. We play like Nintendo 64. I brought out like the alligator game where you press the teeth and it closes on them.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So upbeat, but you might be surprised. You might get a little deep conversation once in a while.
Sure. Oh, I love that. It just sounds laid back and natural.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. I know this is going to be hard, but do you have a favorite episode or a couple and why?
Yes, I definitely have a couple. And I was actually thinking about this before I even got on this call. And I think one of my most favorite episode I did with this band called Sunroom. They were on tour with Louis Tomlinson from One Direction. So they were really hot. And I just reached out to them randomly. I didn't think that they would accept it. The manager didn't answer me first. So I followed her up and she was like, yeah, you know what? This sounds like a great opportunity. So I just very quickly, interviewed these artists that they're really hot, not like physically, they're just like, they're really popping in the industry, if you will. And it was so effortless. It was like the first time I felt like it was my most intense episode and it was so effortless, and it ended up being our most streamed episode. So I think that was my favorite. And I was just with these like 5 random dudes and it was just fun. Like I had fun. I didn't feel like I was working. I wasn't even stressed out. I definitely made fun of them a lot. It was great.
Oh, I just love it when you can get into a flow. And that sounds like that's what you got, was comfortable, but still able to ask all of your questions. That's really fun. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, of course. Because there's so many times too where you're like, ooh, this person's not giving me the best energy. I'm really having to pull teeth here. That was very, very natural. But then I've got to shout out my favorite band ever I got to interview. Their name is Lawrence. And I've been a fan of theirs forever. They went to a school nearby, Boston, Providence College, and they are killing it. Right as I interviewed them, this is a prime example of like a Music You're Missing artist. They went on to go Jimmy Kimmel like 2 weeks later. And they really, really blew up. They just announced a music festival like that they're headlining for 3 days. And their music's amazing. And they were truly like the nicest people in the world. And they're still so kind. They still reshare our posts and whatnot. So yeah, that was one of my favorites just on a personal level.
Totally. Oh, I was so nervous. That. I'm sure. Well, and I feel like it's so fun when you get to know people and in real life, they're just as fabulous as they are like on social media or like on stage. That is 100%. Just my favorite.
Yeah. And coming from like the music industry too, where I've got to work with like A-list artists through my jobs. And I learned not many of them are great. But when you actually get to interview them and, they're not there yet, it's really nice that they're humble.
Totally. That is a perk. Yeah. Is your podcast okay for little ears?
I would say it's probably not okay for little ears, just because I do tend to have a potty mouth. Content wise, we're not talking about anything, that a kid can't hear, but definitely there's some swears in there.
Okay. So strong language. So if you don't want your kids to hear that, just stick a headphone in. It sounds like.
Definitely. And if should there be something sensitive or anything, it'll always be the first thing in the show notes.
Sure. Okay. Perfect. I love it. I love it when I can figure out if it's okay for my kids just by reading the title or skimming show notes really quick. I feel like that is like the number one way that I figure out if it's going to be okay or not. So that's awesome. Thank you from all of the moms out there.
Of course.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't touched on yet?
I would just say the coolest part about Music You're Missing is that supersedes podcasting. One of our biggest things is we have a popular Spotify playlist. So in addition to all of the artists that we interview getting playlisted, I also hand select like a bunch of really, really cool artists that are just deserving of a platform. And that playlist has thousands of followers too. So it's really cool to have like this community. So if you want to join it, check it out. It's Music You're Missing playlist on Spotify.
Okay. I love that. I will make sure to link that and your favorite podcasts in the show notes.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
And before I let you go, where can people find you?
The best way to find me is just by going to Music You're Missing on Instagram. And in that Instagram bio, there is a link tree that has literally every link that you'll ever need. It can bring you to my TikTok, my YouTube, our merchandise, our whatever we have. It's in the link tree in my Instagram bio.
I love that. That is an easy place to start. I will put a link to that as well. Thank you so much, Brendan. This has been a fabulous conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you know someone who could use Music You're Missing in their life, will you share this episode with them? And if you want to get 20% off a mani or pedi system that will make your nails look great, use my Olive and June affiliate link in the show notes. Talk to you soon.
Genetti. Perfect.
Genetti. Okay, I've got to ask, where's that from? Like,
my family's super Italian. My dad has 18 brothers and sisters.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, so super duper Italian. Yeah, they're originally from Italy.